to the gem of the Supreme Buddha. The Buddha is my refuge every day. My homage to the gem of the Supreme Dhamma. The Dhamma is my refuge every day. My homage to the gem of the Supreme Sangha. The Sangha is my refuge every day. My homage to the Supreme Triple Gem. The Triple Gem is my refuge every day. Namo Buddhaya. Meritorious devotees, our great teacher, the Supreme Buddha, the Blessed One, the Tathagata, one day teaches us something awakening, something brightening. Our great teacher, the Supreme Buddha, explains, "O bhikkhus, there are 4 types of light in this world." What does our great teacher say? Our great teacher says there are 4 types of lights in this world. The Supreme Buddha explains, "O bhikkhus, there is the light that's shown by the moon and the sun and the fire." So the first type of light is the light of the sun, the second type is the light of the moon, and the third is the light that's emitted by fire. And then our great teacher, the Supreme Buddha, explains, the 4th type of light is the light of wisdom. Meritorious disciples, our great teacher, the Supreme Buddha, explains, "O bhikkhus, out of these 4 types of light, that is the light of the sun, the light of the moon, the light of the fire, and the light of wisdom, out of these 4 types of light, the foremost light is the light of wisdom." As you know, in the ordinary world, we only know about the light that's emitted from the first 3 sources, that is the sun, the moon, and the fire. We are not quite familiar with the light of wisdom. And so you may wonder, what's really the purpose of the light of wisdom? Meritorious disciples, our great teacher, the Supreme Buddha, one day was among the bhikkhus, and one of the bhikkhus, they asked, "Oh Bhante, Venerable Sir, there are certain places in this world where the light of the moon and the sun does not shine. Oh Bhante, those places are really dark." And so that bhikkhu asked, "Venerable Sir, are there any other place? Is there another place that's even darker than those places?" So what did that bhikkhu ask? The bhikkhu asked, "Oh Bhante, there are certain places in this world where the sun and the moon does not shine." And so the bhikkhu asked, "Are there any other places that's even more darker?" Now what do you think our great teacher explained? As you know, the Tathagata, the Blessed One, is the knower of everything in this world. The Supreme Buddha replied to that monk most compassionately and said, "O bhikkhu, there is such a place where it's even darker than those places where the light of the moon and the sun does not shine." The Supreme Buddha explains, "O bhikkhu, O bhikkhus, the heart of those, the mind of those who have not understood the 4 noble truths is far greater in darkness compared to those places where the sun and the moon does not shine." So our great teacher explains, if a person has not understood the 4 noble truths, then his mind, then his heart is much darker, is greatly dark. He is living in darkness. Although he experiences the light of the sun, the light of the moon, he is living in darkness. The reason being, he is living in the shell of ignorance. Ignorance refers to not knowing the 4 noble truths, not knowing there's something called dukkha, not knowing there's something called suffering in this world, not knowing the cause of suffering in this world, not knowing the fact that it's indeed possible to become free from this suffering in this world, and not knowing the path that leads to the cessation of suffering in this world. Meritorious devotees, our great teacher, the Supreme Buddha explains, if a person wants to get rid of this darkness, if he wants to break this shell of ignorance, then he needs to experience. The light he needs to experience is the light of wisdom. So if a person wants to escape from the darkness that's caused by ignorance, he needs to develop the light of wisdom. The light of moon, the light of the sun, the light of fire cannot brighten the mind or the heart of a person who does not understand the reality in this world. Only a person who has the light of wisdom is able to brighten his world. Only through the light of wisdom can he understand and see the world clearly as it really is. So, meritorious disciples, our great teacher always praised the amazing value of having wisdom. Our great teacher explains, this Dhamma is for the wise, not for the unwise. So, only a wise person will understand this Dhamma, develop the path, and gain real happiness. So, meritorious disciples, today we're going to learn a beautiful sutta where our great teacher explains to us how we can experience this light of wisdom. Today we're going to learn the sutta known as Aadi Brahmachariya Pagngna Sutta that's found in the Anguttara Nikaya of the Pali Canon. Now in this sutta, our great teacher, the Supreme Buddha explains, because there are these 8 causes and conditions that lead to obtaining the wisdom that's fundamental to the spiritual life. So what does our great teacher says? Because there are these 8 causes and conditions that directly leads to the wisdom that's needed, that's fundamental to the spiritual life. Now what's the purpose of leading a spiritual life? Our great teacher, the Supreme Buddha, once explains, because the purpose of this spiritual life, this Brahmachariya, Brahmacharya means spiritual life. The purpose of this spiritual life is to attain liberation. That means to escape from all suffering and experience real happiness. So in order to do that, the Supreme Buddha explains, you need the wisdom that's fundamental to the spiritual life. So in this sutta, our great teacher explains the 8 conditions, the 8 causes that a person needs to develop this wisdom. And the Supreme Buddha explains, because when it has not been obtained, and to increase, mature and fulfill by development after it has been obtained. That is, in this sutta the Supreme Buddha explains, these are the 8 causes and conditions to obtain the wisdom, and if you have some wisdom already, these 8 conditions are the conditions that you must further develop to further fulfill and develop the wisdom you already have. And so the Supreme Buddha explains, what are these 8 conditions? The Blessed One explains here, a bhikkhu lives in dependence on the teacher or on a certain fellow monk in the position of a teacher, toward whom he has set up a keen sense of moral shame and moral dread, affection and reverence. The Supreme Buddha explains, this is the first cause and condition that leads to obtaining the wisdom fundamental to the spiritual life when it has not been obtained. And this is the first condition that you need to increase, mature and fulfill by development the wisdom that you have already obtained. So what is the great teacher explaining here? The Supreme Buddha explains the first condition that you need to obtain this wisdom, if you do not have this already, or to further develop the wisdom that you already have, the first condition is to live in dependence on the teacher. That is our great teacher, the Supreme Buddha. So you must either live in dependence on the teacher, or if it's not possible to live in dependence on the teacher, for example, at a time like today, we are not able to live on dependence on our teacher, because our great teacher has passed away, has reached Parinibbana. And that's why the Supreme Buddha explains, a bhikkhu must either live dependence on the teacher or on a certain fellow monk in the position of a teacher. That is a kalyanamitta, who is someone who is practicing this Dhamma. And the Supreme Buddha explains, you must have moral shame and moral dread towards this person, and you must have affection and reverence. That means you must associate with the teacher or a certain fellow monk in the position of a teacher with keen sense of moral shame, moral dread. And you must feel affection towards that teacher, and you must revere, honor and venerate that teacher. This is the first quality you need in order to develop the wisdom that you have not gained already, or to further develop the wisdom that you already have gained. Meritorious devotees, the Supreme Buddha explains, this is the first condition. And so if you are interested in gaining wisdom, if you want to develop wisdom, what's the first thing you must do? You must first make sure you live in dependence on the teacher. Now, what does it mean? What does it mean to live in dependence on the teacher or on a certain fellow monk in the position of a teacher? It means you must follow the advice, the teaching of the great teacher, or you must associate with another fellow monk who is in the position of a teacher and follow his guidance and advice. That's what it means to live in dependence on a teacher, because he is the person who gives you guidance. He is the person who tells you this is right, this is wrong, this is wholesome, this is unwholesome. This is what you must do, this is what you must not do. He is the person who provides you guidance in your life. Meritorious devotees, next our great teacher explains the second condition that a person must have in his life in order to develop that wisdom that's fundamental to the spiritual life. The Supreme Buddha explains the second condition is, as he is living in dependence on the teacher or on a certain fellow monk in the position of a teacher, toward whom he has set up a keen sense of moral shame and moral dread, affection and reverence, what he does is he approaches that teacher from time to time and he inquires. So it means he goes to the teacher that he venerates, that he reveres, that he feels very affection towards, and he goes and asks questions. He inquires, how is this Bhante? What is the meaning of this? So what he does is he goes and asks the questions he has. And those venerable ones then disclose to him what has not been disclosed. They clear up the meaning and they help him to clear his doubts and dispel his perplexity and numerous perplexing points. So the Supreme Buddha explains the second condition in order to develop the wisdom that's fundamental to the spiritual life is you must go from time to the teacher that you most venerate and revere, that you feel very affectionate towards. You go and ask the teacher about the doubts you have. So you ask, how is this Bhante? What is the meaning of this? So what you do is from time to time you go and you clear up the questions that you have. And this helps you to clear the knowledge of Dhamma that you have. So the Supreme Buddha explained this is the second condition that's required to gaining the wisdom that's fundamental to the spiritual life. Meritorious devotees, our great teacher, the Supreme Buddha explains, one of the ways of gaining wisdom is investigating. That is, asking and thinking within yourself, what is right, what is wrong. This urge to know the right from wrong, this urge to investigate and find out the reality and truth. And so if someone really contemplates, investigates, and searches the truth, then he goes to those with higher wisdom and they ask questions to clear up what's not clear. So this is a condition that's required to gain the wisdom that you do not have, and it's a condition that you need to develop to further improve, to further develop the wisdom that you already have. So that's the second factor. Then the Supreme Buddha explains the third condition that's required to develop the wisdom that's fundamental to the spiritual life. Our great teacher, the Supreme Buddha explains, Having heard that Dhamma, now remember, by this time, he is now associating with a great teacher, a good teacher who gives him guidance. He has much affection towards that teacher, and he has moral dread and moral fear. That means he's shy to do unwholesome things. He's scared to do unwholesome things, because after hearing the Dhamma, he knows there are consequences of doing unwholesome things. And so after hearing the Dhamma, he thinks about the Dhamma, he investigates the Dhamma, and he asks questions from that teacher of the points where he is unclear. So now by this time, he has gained a good knowledge of the Dhamma. Now after he has come to this point, the Supreme Buddha explains what he does is, having heard the Dhamma, he resorts to two kinds of seclusion. Seclusion in body and seclusion in mind. The Supreme Buddha explains this is the third cause and condition that leads to obtaining the wisdom fundamental to the spiritual life. So the third condition is, after you have learned the Dhamma, after you have cleared your doubts, what you must do is you must obtain and resort to two kinds of seclusion. That is, seclusion in body and seclusion in mind. Now what does that mean? Seclusion in body means physical rest, meaning you must not overload your life with work. You must have a balance in life, and you must try to take some time off to yourself to practice the Dhamma. That is why in many suttas, the Supreme Buddha explains, because there are these remote places, there are these trees, there are these foots of trees, and there are these empty places, there are these forests where you must go and meditate. The Supreme Buddha always praised seclusion. And so as a person who is practicing the Dhamma, you must make sure you have this physical seclusion. That is, you must make sure you have some time to yourself where you can separate yourself away from the busy life and have some time for yourself. And then the Supreme Buddha explained, not just physical rest, not just physical seclusion, you must also have mental seclusion. Now what does that mean? Now suppose you go to a faraway forest where it's very calm and serene, and you sit down under the foot of a tree and you start to meditate. However, your mind is overcome with all these sensual thoughts of ill will, and your mind is overcome with sluggishness and drowsiness, and all these doubts are wandering in your head. And your mind is restless, it's jumping like a monkey from one branch to another. It's jumping from one thought to another. If your mind is in this way, then your mind is overcome by the 5 hindrances. So no matter how secluded you are physically, you may be the only person in that whole area or in that whole forest. But if your mind is not free, if your mind is not secluded, if it's overcome by the 5 hindrances, if it's filled with the 5 hindrances, then you have not attained the mental seclusion. If you want to attain the mental seclusion, what you must do is you must get rid of the 5 hindrances. That is, you must practice a samatha bhavana, a calm abiding meditation, and you must concentrate your mind. When your mind becomes concentrated, what happens is the 5 hindrances subsidizes. It disappears for that moment when your mind is concentrated. And so the Supreme Buddha explains this mental seclusion and physical seclusion is something that's fundamental, that's required to attaining the wisdom that's fundamental to the spiritual life. Meritorious devotees, next our great teacher, the Supreme Buddha explains the 4th condition that a person needs to develop in his life in order to gain or obtain the wisdom that he has not already obtained, and to further mature and develop the wisdom that he has already gained. The Supreme Buddha explains the 4th condition is that he is virtuous. So by this time he is associating with the noble teacher. He has heard the Dhamma, listened to the Dhamma, and he has cleared his questions and doubts, and he is now practicing physical and mental seclusion. Meritorious devotees, the Supreme Buddha explains, seeing danger in minute fault is very important. Now suppose you observe the 5 precepts, and so the first precept is that you refrain from hurting or killing living beings. And so you must have the moral dread and moral shame that we spoke before, and you must make sure that you do not even kill even the slightest or the smallest living beings. For example, you must not kill mosquitoes or ants even, thinking, oh, they're just, insignificant. When you observe the precepts, it refers to all beings in this world who are alive. And so you must see the minute, even the smallest fault. You must see the danger of the most minute and smallest fault, and you must try to refrain yourself from doing it. This is an important factor that you need to develop within your life in order to gain that wisdom that you do not already have. As the Supreme Buddha explains, having undertaken the training rules, he trains in them. So he observes the precepts and he practices it. He tries his best to protect the precepts. The Blessed One explains, this is the 4th cause and condition that leads to obtaining the wisdom fundamental to the spiritual life. Meritorious devotees, sila or virtue is so important. Our great teacher, the Supreme Buddha explains, becoming virtuous is like the shore. It's like the shore of the sea. As you know, the water is bounded by the shore. The water does not go beyond the shore. The water of the ocean does not go beyond the shore. Just like that, if a person observes the precepts, then his bodily behavior and his verbal behavior is bounded by the virtue, and it stays restrained and controlled. And the Supreme Buddha explains, virtue is indeed the primary factor, the primary condition that you need to develop the path to wisdom. So being virtuous is very important and critical. As disciples of the Supreme Buddha, you must make sure that your verbal and physical behavior is much restrained. And so the Supreme Buddha explains, the 4th condition that you need to develop in order to obtain the wisdom fundamental to the spiritual life is being virtuous. And then the Supreme Buddha explains the 5th condition or cause that leads to gaining and obtaining the wisdom that's fundamental to the spiritual life. Now, by this time, let's try to recall, by this time he's now associating with a good teacher, and he has moral dread and moral shame towards that teacher, and he has affection and reverence towards that teacher. And not only that, he goes to that teacher from time to time, and he always clears his doubts and he asks questions. And he doesn't stop there. He practices mental and physical seclusion. That means he practices calm abiding meditation. And he's now virtuous. He has observed the precepts and he tries to protect these precepts. Now by this time he has developed himself to a certain degree. Now after, the Supreme Buddha explains, the 5th factor is that he has learned much, remembers what he has learned, and accumulates what he has learned. So he has learned the Dhamma. Now as you know, Dhamma refers to the truth. Dhamma refers to the ideas that arose in the heart of our great teacher, the Supreme Buddha. The Dhamma is the truth about life. So now he is listening to the truth about life, and he doesn't just learn it, he remembers it. So he tries to remember it. And he accumulates it. So he does not forget it. He tries to accumulate a good Dhamma knowledge. The Supreme Buddha explains, he has learned much, remembers what he has learned, and accumulates what he has learned. Those teachings that are good in the beginning, good in the middle, good in the end, with the right meaning and the right phrasing, which proclaim the perfectly complete and pure spiritual life. So he listens to the Dhamma, the noble Dhamma that holds these qualities, And what he does is he has learned much of this Dhamma and he has retained it in mind. Now the first is known as Sutta, that means he has learned, that he has heard and learned the Dhamma, Sutta. And then Datta, that means retained in mind. So he listens to the Dhamma and he tries to remember the Dhamma. And then Vachasa Parichita, now I'm saying the Pali words. Vachasa Parichita means he recites the Dhamma verbally. So he learns the Dhamma. And then what does he do? He retains the Dhamma. And how does he retain the Dhamma? By reciting it verbally. Now suppose, let's take this Sutta for example. Now, right now, at the moment, you're learning the 8 conditions that you need to obtain the wisdom that's fundamental to the spiritual life. So now, you're first listening to the Dhamma, and then what you must do is you must try to remember what you learned today. You must try to retain it in mind. And how can you do this? You must recite this verbally. Now, for example, suppose you learn this Sutta today, so you're learning the 8 conditions that you need to develop the wisdom that's required to fulfill the spiritual life. And so you learned it today, and for example, you may be going to the mall to do groceries in the evening. And so while you're driving, you can try to remember. You can recite the 8 conditions. What are the 8 conditions that I need to develop in my life to develop wisdom? And while you're driving the grocery cart, you can try to recite it verbally. This is how you incorporate the practicing of Dhamma into your life. If you do not become practical in this Dhamma, then you're not able to develop further in the path. So what you must do is you must first listen, and then you must try to retain the Dhamma in mind. And in order to do that, what you must do is you must recite it verbally. And then, after you recite it verbally, what you must do is you must mentally investigate it. Now in Pali it's known as Manasanupekkita. It means you mentally investigate it. You think, you investigate, you contemplate on the Dhamma that you have learned. You ask yourself, what does it mean? What does it mean to associate with the teacher with affection and reverence? How is it that you develop moral dread and moral shame? How is it, what's the meaning of having mental and physical seclusion? How do you do it? How do I get rid of the 5 hindrances? So you think, you investigate the Dhamma you learn. You don't just leave it as hearsay. You think about it deeply within your mind. That's what's known as mentally investigating. So now, by this time, the Supreme Buddha explains, after you mentally investigate it, your view becomes clear. That means you get a clear understanding, a clear knowledge of the Dhamma. So the Supreme Buddha explains, this is the 5th cause and condition that leads to obtaining the wisdom fundamental to the spiritual life. So the 5th condition is that you must first learn the Dhamma, that's good in the beginning, middle and end. And then you must retain the Dhamma that you have learned. And then you must recite what you have learned in your daily life. And then you shouldn't stop there. You must investigate the Dhamma you have learned. Contemplate on it. And when you do these four things, what happens is you get a good knowledge, or your view in the Dhamma, your view becomes clear. You get a clear understanding of the Dhamma. That's what it's mean by penetrated well by view. Your view becomes well penetrated. It becomes very clear. You no longer have the doubts that you used to have, because you mentally investigate the Dhamma and you clear up all the doubts you have. And so the Supreme Buddha explains, this is the 5th factor that you must develop in order to develop the wisdom that we need to break this shell of ignorance and to fulfill the spiritual life. Meritorious devotees, next our great teacher, the Supreme Buddha, explains the 6th condition that a person must develop, a noble disciple must develop in order to develop the wisdom that's needed to brighten that darkness that's caused by the shell of ignorance. The Supreme Buddha explains the sixth factor or the condition is he has aroused energy for abandoning unwholesome qualities and acquiring wholesome qualities. So what's the sixth factor? He has aroused energy for abandoning unwholesome qualities and acquiring wholesome qualities. Now, in order to do this, then you must have a good understanding. You must have a cleared up view about what is unwholesome and what is wholesome. Right? If you don't know what's wholesome and unwholesome, then how can you abandon what's unwholesome and how can you practice what's wholesome? So this is where that teacher helps you. That teacher tells you, when you go to the teacher tells you, you know, this is what you must practice, this is what you must restrain yourself from doing. The teacher tells you this is wholesome, this is unwholesome. The teacher tells you this is good, this is bad. So now since you have already gone to the teacher and learned the Dhamma, by this time we know what is wholesome and what is not wholesome. So now it's a matter of practice. And we are trying to incorporate it into your life and practice it within your life. So the Supreme Buddha explains, having aroused energy for abandoning unwholesome qualities and acquiring wholesome qualities is another factor, a condition that leads to the wisdom that's fundamental to the spiritual life. In this sutta, the Supreme Buddha explains this arousal energy. The Supreme Buddha explains, he is strong, firm in his exertion, not casting off the duty of cultivating wholesome qualities. So when he experiences the unwholesome quality, he does not slack off, he does not become lazy in abandoning it. He is strong, he has a firm exertion. He is firm in exertion, and he does not cast away the duty, he does not become slacking in his energy that's needed to abandon what is unwholesome. Now, for example, suppose you're at work and you're in a meeting and someone says something and you're completely angry. Now, if you're someone who's trying to develop this wisdom that you so need to break this shell of ignorance, to fulfill the spiritual life, then what would you do? If you're someone who has aroused energy, if you're someone who is strong and firm in exertion, then what would you do? When you get angry, you will first become mindful of the fact that you're angry, because you know by now that anger is considered unwholesome. The Supreme Buddha has explained. Desire, hatred and delusion, all these unwholesome defilements lead you to bad destinations. And so, if you're someone who has aroused energy, what you would do is you would try to abandon anger. You would quickly be mindful and try to spread loving kindness and try to remind yourself of the danger of being angry, and you will try to abandon that unwholesome deed. This is how you become practical in the Dhamma. So, meritorious devotees, our great teacher, the Supreme Buddha explains, having aroused energy for abandoning unwholesome qualities and acquiring wholesome qualities is an important condition that you need to develop within your life to obtain the wisdom that you do not have and to further develop the wisdom that you already have. Now, when this, the Supreme Buddha explains, not only should you have aroused energy to abandon what's unwholesome, you must also have aroused energy to acquire wholesome qualities. That is, you must try to develop wholesome qualities that is within you. For example, if you're someone who is virtuous, if you're someone who observes the 5 precepts, then you must have the energy, the aroused energy to further develop your virtue. So on poor days, on opposite days, you must strive to observe the 8 precepts. And as much as you can, you must try to develop your virtue. If you're someone who does not practice meditation, if you're someone who does not have a concentrated mind, then you must have aroused energy. You must be firm in exertion. You must make an effort to practice meditation and gain a concentrated mind. And so in this way you must try to develop within your life wholesome qualities. And it's a fundamental, it's an important condition that you need to obtain the wisdom that's fundamental to the spiritual life and to further develop the wisdom that you already have obtained. And then the Supreme Buddha explains the 7th condition that you need to develop the wisdom that's fundamental to the spiritual life. The Supreme Buddha explains, in the midst of the Sangha, he does not engage in rambling and pointless talk. Either he himself speaks on the Dhamma, or he requests someone else to do it. Or what he does, he adopts noble silence. This is the 7th cause and condition that leads to obtaining the wisdom that's fundamental to the spiritual life and further develop the wisdom that you already have obtained. So now what's the 7th factor or the condition that you need to develop the wisdom that you require? The 7th factor is when you go in the midst of a group of people, the person who's trying to practice the path, the person who's trying to develop the path, a person who wants to gain the wisdom, does not engage in rambling and pointless talk. So when you're in a group of people, you don't just chatter pointlessly. You don't just go on rambling. You don't just talk for no reason. Either you speak the Dhamma or you ask someone else to speak the Dhamma. For example, either you remind another person, do you remember in such and such sutta, the Supreme Buddha explains this. You remember, and so you're encouraging another person to teach the Dhamma or talk the Dhamma, discuss the Dhamma. Or you teach the Dhamma. In this sutta, the Supreme Buddha has explained this. In this way, you make a point about the Dhamma. And if you do not have the space or the freedom to do either one of those, you stay silent. That means the Supreme Buddha explains you adopt noble silence. That means you practice a meditation and you stay silently. And so the Supreme Buddha explains this is the 7th factor, the 7th condition that you need to develop wisdom. Now this is not easy, is it? When we go in the midst of a group of people, the tendency is mostly to speak, to talk. We're always talking. It's very difficult for us to control our speech, isn't it? If there's someone next to us, we get this automatic urge that we want to say something. If there's nothing else to be spoken about, you at least talk about the weather. Today is hot, isn't it? You always speak about something, isn't it? Now you must compare this to your own life and ask yourself, am I someone who always rambles? Am I someone who's always talkative? Am I talking pointlessly? As you know, our great teacher, the Supreme Buddha, has explained, as noble disciples, you must not engage in idle chatter. There are 32 types of speech that you must try to refrain yourself from. Now, this is not easy, but you must try your best to practice this. The Supreme Buddha explains you must only engage in the 10 wholesome types of speech. That is, talk on the fewness of desires, talk on being in seclusion, talk on virtue, talk on aroused energy. These are the things you must talk. You must stay away from talking about idle chatters, talking about actors, talking about actresses, talking about government. Though the Supreme Buddha explains, talking about those things is not going to lead you to escaping from this suffering. Only those speech, known as the 10 wholesome types of speech, will lead you to realizing the Four Noble Truths. So a great teacher, the Supreme Buddha, explains, speaking only the Dhamma, speaking in a very controlled manner, is a characteristic you can see in someone who's practicing the Dhamma, and it's a condition that you must develop within yourself if you want to develop the wisdom that you do not have. And then the Supreme Buddha explains the final factor, the final condition that a person needs to develop in his life to obtain the wisdom that he has not already obtained, or to further develop the wisdom that he has already obtained. And the final condition is he dwells contemplating the arising and vanishing in the 5 aggregates subject to clinging. So he investigates the 5 aggregates of clinging. He thinks, this is form, this is the origin of form, and this is the passing away from form. Such is feeling, such is the origination of feeling, such is the passing away from feeling. And in this way, he contemplates on perception, he contemplates on volitional formations, and he contemplates on the consciousness, Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sanskara, Vijnana. These are known as the 5 aggregates of clinging. So he contemplates on the origination and the vanishing, the passing away of the 5 aggregates of clinging. The Supreme Buddha explains, this is the final condition that a person needs in order to develop, in order to obtain the wisdom that you do not have, and to further develop the wisdom that you already have. And then the Supreme Buddha explains, when a person has obtained these 8 conditions, then his fellow monks recognize him as someone special. They think, this venerable one lives in dependence on a teacher, on a certain fellow monk, and he has set up a keen sense of moral shame and moral dread, affection and reverence towards that teacher. Indeed, this venerable one surely knows and sees. This quality leads to affection, respect, esteem, and accord and unity. So now what happens is, when a bhikkhu has developed these 8 conditions, his fellow monks sees these conditions within him, and he, as a result of those conditions, he becomes very pleasing, affectionate, and respected and esteemed among the Sangha. And so they see that, he's someone who's practicing the Dhamma. They see that this fellow monk has respect and veneration towards the teacher. He goes and asks questions from the teacher, and he's very restrained in his body. He's always in seclusion. He always tries to abandon what's unwholesome, and he has a very good understanding of the 5 aggregates of clinging. In this way, what happens is, when a bhikkhu obtains these 8 qualities, he becomes well respected in the Sangha. The Supreme Buddha explains, these bhikkhus are the 8 causes and conditions that lead to obtaining the wisdom fundamental to the spiritual life. So, meritorious disciples, today we learned the 8 conditions a person must try to develop within his life in order to develop the wisdom that he needs to fulfill the spiritual life, that is, the wisdom that's needed to brighten those dark hearts that's covered by the shell of ignorance. Meritorious disciples, unless we get to hear the Dhamma, there is no way that we can develop this wisdom. So listening to the Dhamma, hearing the Dhamma is the only way that we can develop this wisdom. So I bless you. May you have the opportunity to listen to more and more Dhamma, practice the Dhamma within your lives, and gain and practice these 8 conditions within your life, and gain and obtain the wisdom that you need in order to realize the 4 Noble Truths. The Wise Shall Realize Dhamma Talk today has been most generously sponsored by meritorious Ms. Fiona Chunyak Shin of Singapore. So let's share the merit that we have collected by giving the gift of Dhamma with all Devas. May all devas rejoice in seeing this meritorious deed. May all devas grow in divine lifespan, divine beauty, divine happiness, divine power. And may this merit help all devas to realize the Supreme Buddha's Dhamma and attain the bliss of happiness in Gautama Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And may all the merit that we have collected today by giving the gift of Dhamma be dedicated to meritorious Miss Fiona Chunyak Chin of Singapore, who most generously sponsored this program today for the benefit and happiness and welfare of many people in this world. May she be blessed with long lifespan and good health, and may this merit she collected by giving the gift of Dhamma, and may all the merit that we have collected be dedicated to her, and may she be able to realize the Four Noble Truths in the Gautama Buddha's dispensation and escape from this long journey of samsara. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. May all the merits that we collected today be dedicated to all family and friends of Miss Chin, and may all the merits be dedicated to all those who listened to the Dhamma talk today. And may all this merit be shared with all beings in this world who rejoiced in this meritorious deed. May everyone be able to realize the Four Noble Truths and experience true happiness and attain Nibbana in this Gautama Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo Buddhaya.